want to welcome everyone. We're sitting here as a group of former CMC3 board members, and this is a meeting that we decided to have in the last conference at Monterey. That goes back to December. And I had talked with Barbara at the time of maybe trying to get Sister Clarice Sparkman on camera before she heads to Houston. And so out of that came the idea of getting a number of us together who were involved in the founding of California Mathematics Council of Community Colleges, affectionately known as CMC3. And those honors go to Sister Clarice at a board meeting before we formally became an organization. The people that you're watching, I'm Jim Curl. I'm from Modesto Junior College. I was the first president of California Mathematics Council of Community Colleges. To my right, Ray Wuko, San Joaquin Delta College. We became the second president of the California Mathematics Council of Community Colleges. And then to my left, Sister Clarice Sparkman, who was very much involved with the board in the start of CMC3, and then became involved with AMATIC and served as the second president of AMATIC. And then Pat Boyle is next to Sister Clarice, and Pat was president of CMC3 in 85, 86. We hope you enjoy the time as we reminisce. 40 years and counting, 40 years plus quite actually. So as we talk about things, one of the questions that always gets asked is, when did we get started as an organization and how did it get started? And I guess if I were to go back into the time frame, that would be about 1968. I was attending CMC and Pat was a member of CMC North. That's where most of us did our attendance at conferences in Monterey. Meetings that we had for K through 14, I guess it was. And it was certainly a conference that was devoted to K through 12 more than anything else, but a lot of us had attended as high school teachers, as I was originally. And so about 1969, 1970, I had felt a need, having gone to Modesto Junior College in 68, to try to see if we could do something to have more offerings for community college mathematics instructors. And so I contacted CMC North, and I didn't realize it at the time, but Pat was involved with chairing sections, getting people involved. And so I asked for a section where we could address possibility, if there was an interest in trying to get an organization that would start involved with community college math instructors. And out of the growth of that in 1971.
I think we walked out of the Silmar restaurant after the evening meal. Jim was already in front of the steps to that restaurant, in which the Silmar crowd had a fire pit, a large fire pit, and many of the people felt it advantageous to just put their hands out and keep warm a bit. I stepped out, and Jim noticed my name tag that I represented or was from San Joaquin Delta College, just up the road from Modesto. And he talked to me, got me interested in it, and from there we went off in the next remaining weeks of winter, and then the spring we would meet first at Modesto Junior College and then at San Joaquin Delta College, the two of us at the beginning. And one of the things that was very important to realize that we needed more than just two of us to start an organization like this. So James particularly was getting in touch with people from the community colleges in the wide area. And before long, we had almost 10 people, including ourselves, interested in it. And we had an important meeting, I think it was at the end of the school year in the spring of '72.
Well, related to that, if you think of the people who were involved at the very beginning, and the list involved 10 people, and I think it goes without saying, if it weren't for those 10 people, this organization would not have become what it became. And it's certainly known throughout California. It's known nationally. And the people, and I'll just give a list, because this is something we have been trying to put together since December. And fortunately, we have some programs from the first 2 conferences we had, but the people involved. Frank Denny was known as Mike Denny at Chabot College. Patrick Boyle, who's here with us today. Wei Jen Harrison, and then as Betty Luan from American River. And Sister Clarice Sparkman, San Jose City College and Points Beyond. And Al Utterback, who was at Cabrillo at that time. Brandon Wheeler, Sacramento City College. And then we had Les Birdsell from Diablo Valley, Art Dole, Diablo Valley, Ray from Delta, and me from MJC. And that became our central group. And one of the things that I remember with great fondness of those meetings that we tried to get together, and we started meeting at restaurants. That's one of my recollections of an enjoyable meeting. But at that time, we were meeting together with the idea of answering the question of what we wanted as an organization. And there is, and I think I have it on a piece of paper here on the website this morning for CMC Cubed. The statement about CMC Cubed, it was founded in 1973, so that'll give you a sense. 71, Ray and I were at Asilomar. We're talking about 72. By 1973, we had founded CMC Cubed, and here was I guess if you think of a mission statement, to provide a forum through which community college mathematics faculty in Northern and Central California shall express themselves professionally at local, state, and national level, and to support mathematical activity by students and faculty. And I find it interesting to read that comment now, because in my mind, what I had going, I think, was what we enjoy when we get together just simply as a group out of those initial beginnings. A lot of it had to do with where we were meeting, beautiful place in Monterey. We started out at Asilomar, which technically is in Pacific Grove, but that setting, as Ray refers to it, warming your hands by a fire on a winter evening in Asilomar was, after a year of teaching and being stressed, it was heaven. You got together, you talked, you listened to presentations and enjoyed yourselves, you saw friends, and we tagged into that. And then, of course, I think the next big jump for us was when we went to the Monterey Plaza and shared some of that warmth. The setting was marvelous, and the fact that we are sitting here as a group today, still involved with reminiscing about how this started, but that we're still involved, attending meetings, still concerned, passionate about it, I think has everything to do with how this organization continued to grow from, we were talking maybe 50 to 100 people in the first few conferences to 400 at the last big conference we had at the Monterey Plaza, and we're in the mid-300s consistently now. And then, of course, there is just the need for, I think, at the midpoint of a year, to just get away and share some time together and refresh the batteries, to come, as so many times, I think, and I don't know, Ray, in terms of the meetings that maybe you sat in Asilomar, or the ones, Pat, you were in, but I remember sitting in those meetings and coming out with 2 or 3 ideas that I used forever, it seemed, in classrooms and activities, and that's what we wanted to try to create. So, sort of going to kick it around here a little bit in terms of, in that early time when Pat was involved with CMC North, and little did he know he would be maybe a decade later president of CMC Cubed. But can you talk about those 72, 73, what happened at Asilomar with CMC North, CMC Cubed, and some of the things that were taking place then?
Well, I think what CMC did for us was to let us flap our wings a little bit and develop what we really needed to do, as opposed to, you know, what we thought we needed to do. And the other thing was, and to find out what it took to do it. And so when we actually had to leave that cozy sanctum and fly on our own, we were successful. So I think it was they did a lot for us, just letting us learn.
And I think CMC North was very generous.
Oh, yes.
And one of the advantages, and we've talked about this a little bit, that you knowing so many of the people with CMC North, and at the time I had been teaching at a college in or a high school in San Mateo, and Floyd Downs was very much a mentor for me at that time. I was a young teacher, not as young as Sister Clarice was when she started. What was it, 5 years old?
No, it's 17.
Oh, okay, 17. I was a little bit older than that. But Floyd got me very interested in CMC North, and I think he was very supportive of the idea of doing something with the community colleges and providing that opportunity, because CMC North could easily have just put their thumb down and said, no, we're not going to cooperate with you. But they were most cooperative, most supportive. And one of the things that Pat and I reminisced about as we were sitting in the other room, that the ability to take a speaker from CMC North, that they had the bucks to bring in. I mean, it was and is a very vibrant organization. But if we look at that first conference, the first annual conference of CMC Cubed, okay, and this was at Asilomar, 1973. So this is the first big meeting. And if you were to pick a person to be the closing address at your first major conference, and you put down the checklist, I think George Polya would have to be right up there as maybe your draw. And so as we look at the closing first general session for CMC, and it was our closing session for CMC Cubed, and George Polya, Stanford University, was speaking about Galileo. And that to me was, you know, the support that CMC provided. They would bring in a speaker, not necessarily from California. They bring in, I think, you know, Father Bazuska from Boston College. Yeah. And they bring in speakers who were on the circuit. And we had options to go ahead and include them in our talks. And they could speak on the Asilomar grounds for us, and then they could go ahead and speak for CMC North. And so that was, I think, an important part of our success, that Asilomar CMC North embraced us, supported us, encouraged us. And then you brought up something I hadn't really reflected on, Pat, and that was why maybe Asilomar CMC North thought maybe we needed to go somewhere else. So could you share on that?
Well, there were a lot of factors. I mean, the practical factors is that we were using room that they could easily do it either. Same, but I think they thought we needed to get out on our own, and we weren't going to grow having to share facilities, and I think it was the right thing to do, and it wasn't, and we had the opportunity then to kind of showcase some of the people in our organization. I mean, people that we were teaching with and had heard about and had, so we were, you know, the speakers became homegrown.
As the president of the organization, trying to see where we were going, I was very enamored with the Asilomar grounds. And I remember we went to Del Monte House, which I guess became the Hyatt then. But in retrospect, I think it did allow the growth. And we were able then to have people from our colleges speak, whereas some of us were doing that at CMC North.
In the beginning, Wage and Harrison and I were the only two women on the board. And I want you to know that the men all went off and left the two of us in our rooms that night. We never forgot that, and we never forgave them. But we got even. But it was the magic of starting something and seeing it grow that meant to us as teachers that we were able to give to our students something that was beyond our college and that of a group of the most interesting and interested teachers of mathematics in the state of California.
But in 1973, we were trying to become an organization, and we were meeting, trying to write the bylaws, the Constitution, and the date that we have in that was, I believe, December. I'll double check to make sure in the notes I have here, but I believe that was November 3rd, 1973, when we approved those bylaws. And keep in mind that the first meeting then, if you just keep that date, November 3rd, December 7th,
Yeah.
just more than a month, just barely, and we're at Asilomar with our first formal meeting of CMC cubed as a conference. And the process, Sister makes it sound like maybe she was, along with Wei Jen, just sitting there alone and going to be quiet and not say much. And you had a real impact and a real involvement with the writing of the Constitution, the choice of the name of the organization. Do you want to talk about that at all?
The Constitution to any organization is a very involved thing. I was also involved with another one later on, and it was scrapped because the people did not agree with it. So writing a Constitution is very, very difficult because you want to point out exactly what you want to do without catering yourself in. And that is what the organization has done. Other organizations have had to scratch their constitutions, and the one that was hammered out by you people has lasted the years.
And the first time it was amended, and I don't know if there's a time after that, but it was 8 years before there was any effort to amend it in December 3rd of 1981. So it stood the test of time pretty well.
Yes.
Well, if we go past that first couple of years at Asilomar, and that would have been 73, 74, what was interesting was a meeting we had in 72, and Ray and I have tried to put together a timeline in this. And this was a meeting, and possibly at Chabot College. And so one of the, we talk about trying to do conference preparations, and part of that conference preparation was to go down to Kentucky Fried Chicken and get boxed lunches and bring back that as our lunch. Didn't have something like the Crocker Dining Room at Asilomar by any means. And you remember some of the things about that first meeting. You were talking a little bit about Brandon Wheeler's involvement with that and HP. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Well, our host at that meeting was Frank Denny, or Mike Denny as he was known then, and he provided enough space for us to have several sessions, and he did a wonderful job. And the people who did attend, not too many under the circumstances, were quite in approving for what we had done. And that's what led us to really move forward and get the thing going at a big venue I think in December of 73 or 72.
Well, it had been December of 73 for the first meeting, as far as the Asilomar is concerned.
I turned over not too many years later, a whole packet of material, because I was a saver, and I saved all those newsletters and comment letters and so forth, and the agendas and the minutes of meetings. Unfortunately, I do not know to whom I had turned them over, because we had been talking probably around 80 or so, to have a library where all this material would be placed for people to look at it in the future and determine what they could use from it. And we had selected, I remember, in the discussions, Sacramento, and we wanted one of our board members or a person who would serve on that board to be the so-called librarian. And I know I turned all that material over to someone, but I cannot recall who it was.
Well, if we look at, as I say, 73, 74, then that sort of mini conference, if you will, in 72, then at that point, some major changes occurred for CMC Cubed. And part of that had to do with, in my second year as president of the organization, I had an opportunity to go back to graduate school. And so one of the things we had done along with the conference in the fall was to have meetings at various colleges. And so we had a spring meeting that we would go to a college, and so that we would take CMC Cubed to them rather than them having to come to CMC Cubed, and trying to have growth. And so in 74, in that spring, it's a decision I hadn't made until about April or May. Last minute opportunity came to go to graduate school and return back to the campus. So I took that and I resigned as president, and then that's when Ray took over my presidency.
That was the nicest thing that happened to me. I'm kidding.
But in 1974, you took over, and then for the next
3.5
three,
years.
about 3 years, you were the president of CMC Cubed and saw a lot of growth and a lot of changes.
We managed to get a board of 10 members, and we got some very good people on the board who were able to take over, for example, arranging for the following conference, and people who could handle various things, such as writing a newsletter. And I am very grateful to those people. I probably have some of their names in file, like Alan Utterback, who became vice president at that time and was very instrumental in setting up things for the following conference. From that point on, we've always had excellent presidents elected for their 2-year terms, including Pat Boyle and quite a few others.
And that
To get the community colleges interested in CMC Cubed, we thought it would be nice at least once a year in springtime, away from our annual conference in December, to invite mathematics teachers at various community colleges to attend a breakfast or luncheon meeting on a Saturday in one of the neighborhoods. We would make contact with perhaps 10 community colleges that were within easy striking distance of where we wanted to have a luncheon or a breakfast meeting. And that, I think, enabled us to attract more people. I'm not sure what the attendance was, but we covered the cost, and I'm sure that encouraged people to attend, find out what we were and what they might want to do about it to make things better.
And I think one of the things that Ray just hit on a moment ago, and that is beyond just the people who are officers in the organization, the enormous amount of help that goes on with the boards that are involved. And I think of, my goodness, Ray, after you were president, you served as the liaison between the exhibitors and such for how many years?
About 15 years, up until about 90 or 91.
Yeah, and that's
exhibit manager,
And that's the kind of service I think of as I think of the people that are involved. You go down the list of names of former presidents who have been involved in various activities and made a difference. And if we look at the kind of contributions that are involved with the board, I learned something today I'd forgotten about, and that was what we were talking about with Pat in terms of the logo for CMC Cubed and the letterhead. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I leaked out I was an art major at one time.
Oh, you're going to confess
And
to
so,
that?
yes, yes, very arty. And I've been called upon to do that kind of thing quite a bit. Did some things for CMC too.
And of course, the logo that we're talking about is the lone cypress that's part of CMC Cubed.
Yes.
And then you went ahead and I guess you designed the letterhead too that involves the fancy integral sign and...
Well, Yeah,
Well, for the neophyte who doesn't know mathematics, that's fancy.
that's fancy, huh?
Yes, oh
Well,
yes.
you just put that sign in there in a larger font than the others, and you've got something.
That's what art school will
that's
teach you, right? Well, one of the things that I think is critical to the start of CMC Cubed is that people were drawn to it and participated. And so the question I'm going to ask, and it's one that just occurred to me, what brought you to the organization when it was its infancy, maybe a dream, a sparkle in the eye, if you will? My first thoughts of it, and I can pinpoint it, down at Cal State Fullerton. In 1969, 1970, PSI, Personalized Systems of Instruction with the Keller method, was being talked about there, and we were doing some things at our college, and one of my contemporaries as a student in community college was Dr. Dave Panier, who's been very successful down at Cal State Fullerton, and was looking up some information on him today. And I can remember in an elevator explaining to a colleague of mine from MJC about what I had in mind for what became CMC Cubed. And that had to be about 1970, spring of 71, before our meeting that we had, that Ray and I talked about. And so for me, it was wanting to create something like CMC North for a community college that brought me into it, kept me passionate about it and interested in it. Pat, what drew you into it?
Well, had many years with local. I was president of Santa Clara Valley organization, yeah, and so that was a part of me being a teacher, and in a way I kind of an in-service sort of thing of growing, and so I was anxious to have one that served us more focused,
Okay.
instead of just a broad thing that I was getting in Silmar. So I really looked forward to doing that.
Yeah, and of course that, if I look at, 73, and then you were president in what, 85, 86, I believe it was?
86.
Yeah, that's 12 years before you ascend through the presidency,
Yeah.
and so that's quite a lengthy involvement.
Well, gotta keep busy.
Okay. Sister, your involvement.
Well, when I went to teach at San Jose City College, which is 85% remedial, I discovered that there was no provision for helping the remedial student. And by remedial, they had a high school diploma in their hands, but they could not multiply 2 times 3 or any practical problems with $2 and $3. And so I was looking and searching for information about help for the remedial students. And that was the way that I became involved. After that, of course, it expanded, but that was the thing that I wanted, and it has also been something that, in a way, has not been as fashionable these days as it used to be, and I think that we're missing taking care of the remedial students now. There's too much using calculator instead of thinking.
And I'm not sure things have changed all that much in terms of the perception or the demographics of students going back from 73 to
Yes.
2010.
No.
And much the same concerns now. Ray, what about you? And how you mentioned the idea that you were just getting your first job about that time in California.
Yes, I got the job and started at Delta College in Stockton in September of '71. I had just finished 20 years of teaching high school in Ohio and came west. And so I'm teaching there 2, 3, 4 months. And on that Friday that CMC North was starting its conference, at about 1 p.m. that Friday, the one of the teachers who had received approval from the chairman of the math department to attend the conference came to me and says, she doesn't want to go. Here's your ticket of recognition to go. So at 1 p.m. I'm going home and trying to put together some clothes in a suitcase, put it in the car, and off I went. I had no idea what I was going to get into. I have no regrets. I have no regrets. I've been in it ever since, and I've been proud of that.
I think, that idea of pride in what you've been involved in, what you've shared, what you've been, in a sense, help create. And of the things I reflect on, I think my involvement with CMC Cubed and what it's become, I take an enormous satisfaction in that. And certainly a degree of pride in being involved with it and helping it become what it is today. Of all the things that we think about that have longevity, I mean, as I looked at the Keller Plan, 1968 to 1970, and reflecting back more than 40 years of when I was involved with that, and seeing how things sort of go away, they fall into the abyss of time, to see CMC Cubed 40 years down the line from when we were talking about it, as we go into 2011, it will be 40 years since Ray and I had a conversation at a Silomar. That's a legacy that I think is amazing. But this was a comment Barbara Lasky had written to us, reminding us of this meeting of the CMC Cubed Oral History Project. And so a memo went out to us, and this was Barbara's statement, and I thought, of anything that I could share of what CM Cubed has meant, seeing somebody involved, passionate, making a difference, having an impact in education at the local level, the state level, the national level, and to see CMC Cubed being a role in that gave me a sense of, yes, this is what it's about. And here was Barbara's statement. I'm quite excited to record CMC Cubed's history and thankful to our founding members who built an organization that's been a major part of my professional growth and career. And if that's what CMC Cubed has done for 40 years, we have done more than most. And the only regret I have, and being the four of us here, Wei Jen's not here,
Yes.
and we've got Mike Denny, Art Dole, Wes Birdsell, Brandon, who's no longer around, Al Utterbach. I don't know the history of where some of those people are. But the people who shared and were part of this, they are a part of that history. And in a sense, what we start is more to the credit of the current officers of CMC Cubed, continuing that dream, continuing that goal, that objective to provide a voice, to provide an opportunity for communication. And so as I look at those 40 years now and think of what we've done, that is the legacy that I'm very proud of.
One of the proudest moments of my life was last year at the CMC Cube meeting, in which the founders were called to the front. And I was lucky enough to be one of those. And to stand before this group and to receive a standing ovation from the members of CMC Cube, who were vitally interested and giving their time and learning so much. It's one of the proudest moments of my life. It is. Okay.
Thank you.
You were there, and so were you. So,
It was very special to stand up there with you and with Ray and be part of that. And again, one of the things, and this is a big thank you to Barbara, because to be recognized while you're still around to enjoy it is very nice.
Yes.
Yes, it is indeed.
There's so many wonderful things, and as being an officer of the group, one has a chance to meet and write and talk to people who supposedly are important in the educational field.
And from my standpoint, for those of you who have been watching what we have done, I know there's going to be some editing that's done and so on, but it has been real delight just to get together with those of us up here, share that time, and want to thank each of you for a part you had in my life, because it made my life more meaningful, more enjoyable, and it is very much an appreciation. And thank you, Barbara, for the opportunity to do this. It's been very special.
I'm going to clap.
Yes.